The Animal Crossing franchise is one that's been dear to my heart for a long time. I got my first 3DS in 2011, which really was like a shared console with my sister, but eventually I got my own, which was a light pink color, while the one that we had shared was purple because that was her favorite color at the time. And when we first had it, originally all we really had was the Mario games, which we would all play together, and my Nana would play as well. And we kind of had a small competition with each other going on to see who could beat what level first. But what I really wanted to try was Animal Crossing. I'd seen all these cute ads for it, and it looked like super fun. Unfortunately, I was very easy to advertise to. And I remember begging and begging and begging for it. But it took a while before I actually got a hold of it. Because I remember most time it was like, no, we have Animal Crossing at home. And Animal Crossing at home was like me drawing the characters on a paper, yearning for the game. But eventually I got it for Christmas. And I was super hyped. And surprisingly, I think it was one of the only ones I begged for that was exactly what I had expected it to be. I got to decorate my own little character and house, build a town from the ground up, collect cute furniture and fish, and make friends with the little animal characters that were running about on the little town. It looks kind of like an island, but it's not. But I always kind of thought that it was like an isolated little island. Um, Jeremiah, the frog, was my favorite character. I always gave him my favorite fish catches. I think there was one voice line once where he talked about liking fish, and I took that and I ran with it. Jeremiah was like my only friend. I was going through a lot at the time. I just had a lot going on in my life, and it didn't help that I was being heavily bullied at school too, and I didn't have many friends. So New Leaf kind of became an escape for me from all of that. And I would play it with one of the only friends that I had in elementary school when we were on the bus, because New Leaf had a feature where you could play multiplayer by connecting your DSs together. And I bet if I still had my old DS, that if I loaded it on, I could probably see her little house in the little plaza, but unfortunately I don't have that anymore. Because when I was in middle school, we went on a trip to see some relatives, and my 3DS was stolen, along with all my games and Orange Stuffed Cat and my beloved Raggedy Andy, because they were all in the same bag. And I was pretty devastated about it, but time moves on, and eventually I kind of just forgot all about it. I didn't forget the Raggedy Andy, though. I'm still salty over that. But 2020 rolled around. The COVID pandemic was rough for everyone, I'm sure, and I'm not the only person who was made to stay home instead of going to school in person. But I do feel for me that it had a pretty large impact on my social abilities and also my mental well-being. I felt really lonely, and I found myself that most of the only people I had talked to were online friends, which was okay, but there was still a certain level of you didn't really know each other all that much, and it didn't scratch that itch for me of actually doing things with people. And what ended up scratching that was one Christmas during the pandemic, I got a blue little Nintendo Switch Lite, which I still play on and have to this day, and a copy of Animal Crossing New Horizons. And it kind of hit me that I didn't realize I'd forgotten entirely about this series that had been like so core to who I was growing up and my mental well-being. Like, it feels kind of pathetic to admit it, but these little virtual guys were like actual friends to me. They meant a lot to me as a kid. And when I got it, it felt like sort of a fresh start and rekindled my love for the series. Additionally, a while later, I went to visit my mom in Michigan during the pandemic, which was during the time period where we still thought everything wasn't that big of a deal, that it would all blow over. Turns out it didn't. But she got me a new 2DS XL, which I don't really use it anymore because the SD card reader is broken. I mostly use my definitely not hacked 2DS that I call Gloomy DS. I bought off eBay this past year, but and a copy of Animal Crossing New Leaf. And I remember for multiple nights I just stayed up trying to hunt for Jeremiah, which is kind of insane. And no, I never found him, but I did find Kyle, who's my new obsession. But anyway, moving on. I would regularly play on my New Horizons island. Um, and as I said, the 2DS that I mentioned. Over the past few years, though, despite my island never reaching like the level of a lot of the really aesthetic, fully decorated ones you see online, I kind of found myself losing interest in the game. Like, weirdly enough, the jankiness of New Leaf was a lot more appealing. It somehow felt more real than the kind of dollhouse-esque aspects of New Horizons. But I really do want it to love New Horizons. And there was also an element of, I feel like since 5 years have passed, I'm a drastically different person than I was when I was like 14, which it feels insane that the COVID pandemic was that long ago. But yeah, I was like 14 and now I'm 19 years old, and I think it's needless to say I've changed a lot just in maturity, and as well as like my mental well-being and how I view the world and stuff has changed. So it felt like I needed a full restart. And so I did. I, like, on an impulse, on a whim, a few weeks ago, I took out my Switch and I just restarted my island. And it kind of hurt at first, and all I have left of it is a few screenshots and some of the little clips that I'm putting in this video, where it's the character with the short hair that goes by Stars. But that's it. That's all that I have. And I feel like that's something I kind of needed to do to reinvigorate my love for the game. I feel like 2020, my Animal Crossing phase for me, I was pretending to be someone else, somewhere else. I wasn't connecting to the games in the same way that I did when I was like younger. I was just disconnecting from myself and from everything around me to escape. Which I was escaping as a kid too, but it was more so I wanted to be myself somewhere else. In this, I kind of ditched me entirely, which I think really was just another sad way my depression manifested. It helped some, but I really could not enjoy the games as much as before, and I wasn't entirely sure why. It wasn't me enjoying a game, I was just like playing a role. And I felt like this role followed me no matter where I went. It was like a mask that I had gorilla glued to my face and couldn't take off. I didn't know who I was other than being like hurt and confused by everything that happened with the pandemic. So I kind of just hid behind that and let it consume me, even though that itself did kind of start to eat away at me later. I refused to enter my actual name in single-player games. I put Stars, which wasn't even a nickname I had. It was just an online pseudonym that I grew more comfortable with a pseudonym than myself, if that makes sense. Which wasn't great, but I wouldn't dress up in any ways that I actually even like to dress up. I dress my character up more like a character, like an actual character. There was just, oh yeah, this is how Stars dresses, not me. So when my SD card reader on my 2DS broke, it kind of was like a forced reset, in which this time I entered my middle name. And I didn't realize like even how much that small change would change how I interacted with the game so much. You can't disconnect as much when you go to talk to a villager and they immediately name drop you in the middle of it. I did keep the short hair, but that was just because I'd been rocking a pixie cut for the past 3 years. So that was the one aspect that, like, kinda did tie my characters to me, was that I did have that short hair. Um, Although I have started to grow my hair back out recently, uh, mostly as a thing of, I guess, just trying to look different from how I did then, to show that, like, I've changed since the pandemic and stuff, because that was a really painful time for me. All that mushy gushy stuff aside, as I said, I restarted my island in 2025. And I'm not going to say that you should too, because it's a really personal decision for me. And I don't know that it'll have the same emotional impact for everyone else that it had for me. But I do think that for me personally, it was very necessary for me to restart my island and be more true to myself in order to love the series again. Oh, also, treasure islands are a horribly wonderful temptation now.